Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay. Living with Dr. Marissa. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, love, laugh, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay on ubnradio.com.
Weekly talk radio show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa. Every Tuesday at naturally high noon on your phone or computer at www.universalbroadcastingnetwork.com or ubnradio.com in Hollywood, California. And I'm here with my amazing station manager, Tony Sweet, and fabulous sound engineer, Chris Rivera. And this is a show about hope and how to be happy 88% of the time. So there's no CNN, constantly negative news, no gossip, and no K-words, no Kardashian talk. And if you missed any of my past interviews with fantastic past Oprah guests like Don Miguel Ruiz, Dr. Pat Allen, Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, Dr. John Gray, and last week, Marianne Williamson, you can get the links from my website, www.4balance.org, for the free podcasts on iTunes and YouTube. And today, I'm blessed to have another past Oprah guest for the second time. Geneen Roth is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Woman, Food, and God. She's appeared on many national television shows, including The Oprah Show, 2020, the NBC Nightly News, CBS Early Show, Dr. Oz Show, and Good Morning America. Articles about Geneen and her work have appeared in numerous publications, including O, the Oprah Magazine, Cosmopolitan, Time, and the New York Times. Geneen Roth's pioneering books were among the first to link compulsive eating and perpetual dieting and deeply rooted personal and spiritual issues that go far beyond food, weight, and body image. She believes that we eat the way we live, and that our relationship to food, money, and love is an exact reflection of our deepest held beliefs about ourselves and the amount of joy, abundance, pain, and scarcity we believe we have or are allowed to have in our lives. And I was so grateful to have her last month come on and talk exactly about that. And we had a great time. It was a brilliant interview. And I want, in doing the research, I came across something that I didn't know about, that I'm sure most of my listeners didn't know either. And that's why I asked her back on here. And she's going to talk about the experience of having all of her money taken away by Bernie Madoff. So thank you, Geneen, for keeping your promise to come back. Welcome to the studio again, Geneen Roth.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am so blessed to have you back. And I'm just amazed. Of course, you already have said it was a learning experience, but I would like you to take me back to that time, because I want to know you're human, and you can't have been as gracious about it when it happened. How did it happen?
Now, how did which part happen? How did we find out
Yes.
that we lost all of our money, or how did we end up investing with such a crook to begin with?
Okay, let's do that one. Or let's do both. Let's do both. You're successful. You worked really hard to get where you are and were at the time. This happened, 2 years ago? Not that long ago, right?
Oh, no. Well,
no,
the Madoff was arrested 5
years
and a half years ago. And we I think I, like many women, and I think like many people, but women in particular, because after this happened, I did interview a lot of women, um, think that the world of finance is quite complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And so we either, actually, I'll talk in the first person
Okay.
here because I don't want to talk for all women. I felt as if I was doing the work that I was doing in the world, which I adored and still do adore.
That you're very good
And
at.
started from nothing, with nothing, as a maid and a dishwasher, and then started doing what I loved. And I, for a long time, I wasn't even quite sure about, I was so clueless about money and investing, and because that always seemed to be the world of man and my dad and the big powerful men who knew how to do it. And so I didn't really know very much. And when I met my husband in 1986, I assumed that he knew more than I did. And yet our history of investments was not very good. I seemed to be fine at doing what I loved and making the money I make doing that, but made poor investment choices, always seemed to lose money in any investment I made. And it was after my husband and I, our financial advisor, had embezzled quite a lot of our money in 2000, that a good friend of ours whose father had known Madoff invited us into his Madoff fund, where you could invest anywhere from $2,000 to anything you wanted to invest. He did that as a gracious thing for all of his friends, because he had been invested, he and his family had been invested in for 30 years and had done well that entire time. And we felt relieved and grateful, because when something has been working for 30 years, you assume that it's going to keep working.
Right. Right. And
So
I didn't even know about the prior
we
embezzling. So you even had someone before this who stole from you. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's what I mean. I say in Lost and Found, my book that I wrote about this, if we decide to invest with anybody, people should run the other way. So that's probably a surefire way that you're going to lose money. No. But so that's how we ended up with Madoff. We didn't know who he was. We did, and my husband did actually the same thing as I did. We loved our friend and trusted him. And we'd known him for quite a few years, and we knew that he had something, that he was a lawyer and quite a successful lawyer, and we knew his family was successful, and that's how it happened.
Wow. Right. So okay. So then you found out, a call came in.
Then we got a phone call. Then we started putting more and more money. We actually used our Madoff account as a bank, as a savings account in a way.
Wow.
Because, my husband loves what he does. I love what I do. And
can I ask what your husband does? I don't know. I don't think I know.
His name is Matt Weinstein, and he works in the field of laughter and play.
Oh, wonderful.
So he gives, yes, he's wonderful and very funny. Thank God.
And I've read, and I've read a number of things where your love for him comes out very, very strong. So yes. So you can tell him that you love him on the air.
We just thought Richard knew a lot, and instead of us doing all the research, seemed like Richard had done it and been working for 30 years, and this was a good thing. And so that's what we did. And then in December of 2008, which is when this whole thing got exposed, Matt went off on a lifelong dream trip to Antarctica for a couple of weeks. And I was by myself and got a phone call from a good friend of mine saying that Madoff was in handcuffs and that the whole thing had been a fraud and a Ponzi scheme, and all of our money and actually all of our friends' money, because we knew about maybe 20 or 25 other people who had done the same thing we did, because Richard extended this offer to all of our friends. Everybody had lost their money. And Matt and I, so that meant that we were left with basically nothing. 30 years of life savings having gone down the tube.
Wow.
And it was shocking and terrifying, and also shameful, really, because everybody knows that putting all your money in one place is not a good idea. And so there were so many conflicting and piled up feelings and emotions, terror and shame, and
wow. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm sorry that happened. I can't even imagine. It's not pleasant, that's for sure. But
no.
Then
but
the recovery.
I called.
Yes.
I called as I say in Lost and Found, I'm not really. Well, I don't see myself as somebody who makes lemonade out of lemons.
Oh, really?
Although that seems to be what I do.
Right.
Because I have such good support and love in my life, I called a good friend and a spiritual guide of mine, because I couldn't move from where I had answered the phone. And she said to me, after saying, "Oh, this is horrible and you'll need to grieve," and she was appropriately shocked, and then said to me, "Nothing of any value has been lost." And I said to her, "This is not the time to be spiritual," because it seemed, of course, something of value had been lost. We had just lost 30 years of our money, and I didn't know where we were going to live or how we were going to live, or if we, everything was in shambles. And over the next couple of days and weeks, I realized I spent the first couple of nights not being able to sleep at all. And because
it's sickening.
I was terrified.
Yeah, it's sickening. I mean, I can't even imagine that feeling. It's worse than pretty much there's, what is that, the number 2 stressor, death of a loved one, the first one, and then financial loss, I think, is number 2. So
yes, it's very well, because it connects in with your survival and how am I going to live, and all the things that money is connected with. And I realized that if I was going to be able to live through the night and the next days, and for all I knew the rest of my life, I was going to have to start focusing on what I hadn't lost, not what I had lost, what I had enough of, not what I didn't have enough of. And that was a vigilant practice for me.
Yeah.
And I did somewhat out of survival, because my ranting mind was so intense and so terrified that if I allowed myself to get lost in my thoughts, then I was lost.
Right.
And I couldn't function. And so if I brought myself back to the fact that I had a roof over my head at that moment, the fact that I had enough to eat at that moment, the fact that I was fine at that moment, the fact that, the sky was still here and I could walk and see and breathe and drink and, I could eat, and I was, whatever it was at that moment that I still had, I had to keep bringing myself back to that. And of course, that's the whole essence of any spiritual practice.
Right.
So it gets,
it's a discipline.
There's something about crisis that, and whether it's the crisis of losing everything as I did, or getting a terminal diagnosis, or almost dying, or of
Losing,
you
uh,
know,
losing a marriage that's a
yeah,
traumatic
yeah,
marriage,
loss
losing a
brings up.
child. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
That's
your
right.
formula is such wisdom. So if anyone out there is listening who loss of a job that you depended on, or loss of anything, that the beginning is allowing the grief, what you said your friend allowed you to work through, and then the discipline of focusing on what you have and who you are, that is outside of that. That's what I heard. Is that about accurate?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's true. I did cry a lot,
Mm,
and I um, I got a lot of support. A friend came over and spent the night with me
mhm.
for the first 3 or 4 days,
Wonderful.
and I talked to a couple of people who I knew could sort of help me bring myself back when I went flying off the cliff of
Mm,
terror and
mhm,
shame.
mhm.
But that discipline of bringing my mind back and noticing what happened. I'll just take a step back for a second, because
Sure.
unless you do that, any decisions you make from the place of absolute terror are
Mhm.
not going to be good decisions. And so,
Right.
really, any the only way to proceed is to um, to somehow bring yourself into this very moment
Mm,
and to see what's happening in this moment.
right.
And from there, you can make decisions
Right.
that actually are wise and objectively sound decisions,
Mhm.
treatment plans, the kind of support you need, what to do next.
Mhm.
I wrote in for myself after doing that practice for a couple of weeks, which, as I said, had been the essence of a meditation practice I've been doing for 30 years but hadn't been very successful at. Suddenly, with this loss, I was able to do that because it was about surviving
Mm,
moment to moment, just
mhm.
in terms of not eating myself up
I was
with shame and terror.
right. And you said eating yourself, and I was going to ask you about that. You know, you're the old, when we talked last time on the air, and you talked about times when you felt suicidal around food and eating and weight. Did any of that come back when you
No, that was that period. That was in 1978
okay.
that I was talking about being suicidal, and no compulsive eating came back. There was no desire to binge.
Good.
No, um,
So your work,
no, none
your
of that came back because the tools that I had this time, the choices that I could see I had, I saw that I had a choice. Choice A was
mhm,
suffer
mhm,
by getting lost in my thoughts, in my mind, and the shame and the terror.
mm,
Choice B was bring myself back to this moment and breathe and notice that there were still
mm,
birds, a sky over my head,
right.
that my dog still wagged her tail,
Mhm.
that I still had a body, that I was still above ground,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that I still had my mind,
Yeah.
that there were, and the more I focused on that,
Yeah.
the happier I became.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the and or certainly the less fearful I became, but I would say genuinely happy. That's the whole practice of gratitude and appreciation
Yes.
that
Yeah.
Brother David Stendhal Roth talks about, which he says is the only practice any of us ever need. But it's something that we forget about all the time, to
Yes.
appreciate and
Yes.
take in the good we
Mhm.
already have.
Mhm.
And it works. That's the amazing thing. It really
Absolutely.
does work.
Absolutely. I start with 8 gratitudes every day as part of
Yes.
the 21-day fast from complaining. Wayne Dyer says 5, but I'm a recovering overachiever, so I do 8. And 8 is actually a
Yes.
homonym in Chinese for good fortune. So I absolutely concur. I didn't go through anything like that, but there's a similar vein when I went through the divorce, where, you know, I all the money that I had made in my business was, being thrown around in the lawyer's office, how much I was going to have to pay, and, anywhere from 10,000 to 2 million and up and down. And the business that I had built was gone. And I felt, when I stayed in my head, and same shame, blame, terror. And I can remember going to the gym, with that same, I don't know how I'm going to pay, and I don't know how I'm going to live. And I bumped into, not by accident, someone who said, you will always have a roof over your head, and you will always have food in your stomach, and you will always have people who love you.
Right.
And I'll never forget that day at the gym. Her name's Erica. And,
Yeah.
that discipline, and then choosing from that day forward to not focus and go down what I call the labyrinth of shiitake. Because as soon as I start doing the negative thinking and the worst case scenario, and then I end up in the effinator, there's no way out. And then I feel like crap.
Yeah.
And the only thing that works is gratitude. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
And then you wrote a
And
beautiful book.
right. Well, see, what happened is, and this is sort of goes to what we're just talking about, I started realizing that I had a lot to say about this, because there was a lot of press there was a lot of press, of course, about all of this every day. The newspapers were filled with Madoff this and Madoff that, and
I know, bad jokes
I
too.
realized that I had a different perspective, and I wanted to write about that and share that with people about how they could find their balance again. And because I had found mine within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And because of that, a friend suggested that I write about it, and the piece was originally called "What Bernie Madoff Couldn't Steal from Me." And so I wrote it, and it appeared on Salon, I guess the first week of January, so about a month after the debacle, and it became their number one widely read piece on that. And then from there, I realized I could write a book about it. And so that's what I mean. If I had lived in the shame and the terror, then I never would have written that piece, and I never would have written that book, and I never would have gotten actually interested in any of this. And so a lot of good came out of that. But I would say the most good, and I feel like, writing the book was fabulous, and I learned a lot about the relationship with money and how similar it is to the relationship with food. That was the most shocking thing for me.
Yeah.
But I would say the most good that came out of this was understanding that no situation that I'm ever in is unworkable. That if I can bring myself back to what is here, to just bringing myself back over and over and over again, while allowing the wash of feelings to come through, then no disaster has the power to tear me apart. And that's what I'd always been afraid of, that something would happen and I'd have a nervous breakdown, or I would not be able to survive emotionally, because I think I was afraid of my own mind and the very scary places that my mind could take me to. And even though I had lived through and worked through the trauma and the abuse that had led, in my opinion, to my compulsive eating for so many years, and I had had such a nasty childhood, the way so many people have had, I still didn't quite trust that I could be there for myself in the way that would help me live through a disaster like this. And having done that and having seen that I could, that's the best thing that came out of that.
Wow. I can totally hear that. It's like nothing can hurt you. There's nothing can happen to you that is going to take you down, or
Right. I mean, I
you'll
will go
lose yourself.
down and I wake up and, a lot of times in bad moods and I get identified or triggered or reactive about a
Mhm.
particular thing and I think it's the end of the world and then I catch myself. Then I realize I have a choice. So I think this is a back and forth, back and forth,
Mm.
back and forth process,
Mhm.
but eventually you understand, you catch yourself sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner from that brink of disaster that you can go tumbling over. You
Right.
don't get on the bus, so to speak,
Right.
of shame and guilt and fear.
Mm.
And it's sort of like, and again, one of my spiritual great guides said to me, it's sort of like you don't get on the bus or get on the back of the bus and hang on to those pipes
Smelly and
that are
burny and
spewing
hot.
diesel fumes
Yeah.
and dragging you and bumping you along on the road.
Mm.
You just say, no, thank you, I'm going to let go.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to do this time. I think
Right.
we think that the more we suffer, maybe the more somebody will come and help us
Right.
or rescue us
Right.
somehow. That if
Right.
we're just feeling miserable and lonely and hysterical enough, then something will happen, because as a kid, you know, something could have, should have, or else did happen, with
Mhm.
somebody coming. But the thing is, we're adults, and so now
It's
we've got different choices, and this
right.
is the
Right.
choice, to know
Right.
that you have a choice.
Yes. That's the most powerful balance tool I know of,
Yeah.
that we have the choice. So it's your choice whether you want to feel sorry for yourself that you had 30 years of money taken and stolen away from you. And that choice leads you to a place where you're crying and laying in bed and bemoaning, which is okay as a normal grief process at the beginning. But 10 years down the line, if we're still in a fetal position, pickling in our victimhood, shame, blame, fear, terror, anxiety, worry, depression, it isn't um it isn't much of a life.
No,
It,
it's not Bernie Madoff who did that to you. Then it's your own mind,
mm,
and then it's understanding that it is your mind, and then getting the support that you need
mhm.
to learn how to do it differently. Most people do it like that. It's
Well, I think that's one of the
because,
reasons why there's 1 out of 4 are taking anti something.
yes, it's very hard to realize that that so I mean some of um some of it is biochemical and choiceless, and some of it really is a choice. For
Mhm.
me, the most powerful thing is that moment where I see I've got the choice,
Mhm.
where, okay, I've got a choice now about where I put my attention. That is in your power.
Right.
The rest of the stuff, what happens, and even the thoughts you think, I don't think they're actually about what you choose to think. I would much rather not have most of the thoughts I think. Definitely not have those thoughts. But if I put what the choice is do I just, saturate and marinate in those thoughts and just
Mhm.
keep on following them, or do I put my attention somewhere else?
Right.
That's what my choice is.
Right, right. I love that saying, my mind is like a dangerous neighborhood. You don't want to go in there alone.
Right.
Right. Or the other
Yes.
one is at night, this is one I use in my teaching is, that we go through this little meditation practice where we unzip our heads and put it on the table, like with our jewelry. So that the
Yes, that's
mind is
that's a good thing
allowed
to do.
to go to sleep. And if you just tuned in, we are having a fantastic teaching from life experience from Geneen Roth, best-selling author of Woman, Food, and God. Very loved by Oprah and loved by my listeners. So I had her back again talking about her very real experience and how she has really turned this whole situation from Bernie Madoff into a teaching and wonderful gift to people who are trying to recover from tragedy. And that's The Sound of Music. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about, is money the root of all evil? But first, I hear the music that's reminding me to thank today's sponsor, who actually enabled me to bring Geneen Roth on. And that is thanks to Harbor Aesthetic Spa. And Gigi, who's a new friend of mine, provides the ultimate in cutting-edge anti-aging skin treatments. All services are completely customized to your specific skin type, needs, and concerns, using only the finest skincare products and techniques available. They invite us to experience their treatments, and they promise that you'll feel the plumping, toning, firming, and tightening feeling before and after your treatment, bringing out a younger and more naturally beautiful you. And that is the Harbor Aesthetic Spa. It's 16845 Algonquin Street in Huntington Beach, California. I know you didn't write that down. Just use Yelp, put in Harbor Aesthetic Spa, go to Gigi, tell her that Dr. Marissa sent you, and she's going to give you a nice fat discount for any treatment that you go to her for. So thank you, Gigi, for sponsoring Geneen Roth on Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa.
Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa. To be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate, to live, love, laugh, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Fay on ubnradio.com.
And welcome back. Welcome back, Geneen. Thank you for talking about how to recover from having a lot of money taken away from you. And you mentioned the last time you were here that it's similar to food. So how is money also more than just about money? And how do people be happy with or without money?
Well, first of all, one thing I want to say is that it's good to make distinguishing levels of without money.
Okay.
Because it's quite stressful not to have enough money to live, not to be able to pay your rent, not to be able to have gas money, not to
be able to pay your
know
taxes,
how you're going to go from day to day. In the same way that it's quite stressful not to have enough food to eat.
True.
So we're talking different categories here. I am not actually talking about, not either in my books about compulsive eating or in this book about Lost and Found about money, I am not talking about not having enough money to
survival.
eat.
Survival, right?
Yeah.
That Maslow's hierarchy. Okay, so good distinction.
So that is it's important to say that because that's a different world, and I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm about to say. To say, oh, you can just think your way out of not having enough money to eat, and just focus on what you do have, not what you don't have. I mean, of course, you can still do that no matter what you have,
right?
But this is a different category, and so I'm not an expert in that, nor do I want to talk to or about that.
Right.
What I do know, however, about money is that we all believe that more is better, in the same way that we believe that being thinner is better. That's why that saying, you can never be too thin or too rich, is out there as a cliched saying, because our culture buys into that. We buy into that belief system that when we're thin and or when we're rich, we will be happy. That will be the answer to it all, and that is just simply not true.
Right.
And it's not true based on the research that so many people have done about money. Stumbling on Happiness, Daniel Gilbert's book, talks about that. all the research that's been done that so many of us have read about the lottery winners winning money and being just as unhappy as they were before they had the money, because now they've traded one set of problems for a different set of problems.
Right. Absolutely.
A thing out there is not going to make you happy.
Yep. I work with the executive. I work with top 3-level CEOs, senior executive vice presidents in my consulting practice, and I can tell you that's I mean, they make what, $5 million a year, some of them, and I'm coaching them, so obviously they're not happy. And from a personal point of view, I can remember in my 20s, I said, if I had 50,000 in the bank, I'll be happy.
Yes, right.
And then I got 50,000, and then it was like, oh, but let's go for, inflation. So let's go for 150, and let's go. And then it was $1 million. Then it's never enough.
I know.
When are we going to be happy?
Well,
and then it all got taken away. So then, so I couldn't go there anymore, but I am happy.
Well, we had more when we lost our money in Madoff, because it was both my husband and I. It was 30 years, and we had between us more than $1 million, and I was still anxious about money, about what was going to happen, about how we were going to live when we got older, about did we have enough. I mean, there was that level of not enoughness, and I think this is this goes to the heart of what we're talking about, which is that there's something, I think, intrinsic to having a personality and an ego and living in this culture where more is better. We're breathing the air, swimming in the water. You can use whatever metaphor you want, but that we feel like we're not enough, we're not attractive enough, successful enough, we don't have enough money, we're not thin enough, we're not smart enough, we're not kind enough, we're not wise enough. I mean, just you name it. There's a not enoughness. There's a basic feeling of deficiency that we carry around, that we then project on to many other screens, the screen of body and food and thinness, the screen of money, of success, of relationship, love, friendship. I mean, you name it, and people will often say, I don't have enough of any of those things, all of those things, two of those things. But the common denominator is not enough. And part of that is not paying attention to what you do have. Part of that, so therefore, and I'm going to use the analogy with food, that when we do eating meditations at my retreats.
Oh, and you have one coming up. Yes, I was just going to say, yes, please.
What will happen often with somebody, and you can notice this with yourself. I was noticing it yesterday. I was eating a piece of chocolate. I like chocolate a lot. I always, pretty much every day, have a piece of chocolate. My attention wandered. I put it on something else. My phone rang. I can't remember what, but then it was gone. And I felt like I had missed it, and I didn't have enough. And I wanted more because I didn't pay attention to the one that I had. And during the eating meditations at the retreat, we see with all of us that people are focused on the next bite. You know, they take one bite, they put it in their mouths, then they put the next bite on the fork, and the fork is on the way into the mouth before the one in the mouth is chewed and swallowed and done. So we're always focused on the next one, not this one. And as long as you focus on the next one, which is another way of saying the one you don't have, not the one you do have, you will always feel like you don't have enough.
Yes. Yeah. I was doing that driving in. Was I focused on you? No, I was focused on what I was going to say at the end of the show of who's coming on next week. And I was like, I can't believe this. Right? I have Geneen Roth on the air, and I'm thinking about, is it going to be Lisa Nichols or not? Or so I'm totally guilty of that. I'm better. I am actually, when I eat, I savor, or when I have that first sip of coffee, I love that first sip of coffee in the morning. And so my goal now is to actually enjoy like the second sip of coffee too.
Yes, that's
or the
right.
second
As
bite.
much as the first.
Yes. But
Yes.
that's a discipline too. And in
Of
present
course
centered.
it is. And it's the same discipline or practice as we were talking about before. What you do have, not what you don't have. That means noticing moment to moment. And look, people spend their whole lives like this. That's what Zen is all about.
Right.
I mean, Zen Buddhism is all about showing up in the moment. That's what all the essence of all spiritual practices are about. So we're not saying, and I'm not saying, oh, this is a snap, anybody can do it.
Right.
It's just understanding that unless you do and until you do, then you will never be satisfied
Yes.
with anything. Love, money, success, food, thin body, nothing. It's just good to know that from the get-go, because then your priorities can shift. Then you can start at least paying attention to what you do have a couple of minutes a day. It's very important to break this down into baby steps. Otherwise, people feel like, oh man, I can't do this.
Right.
Forget it.
Right.
So yes, you can for 12 seconds at a time.
Okay. It reminds me when you're talking that concept that you wrote about in the refrigerator book that I love. When you eat at the refrigerator, pull up a chair. For those of you who haven't read it, you have to read that book. It's one of my favorite books. But you talk about lanyap, that ghost, or that the one that no matter what he eats, there's a restriction here, so it never reaches that point of satisfaction. And so many of us in this lifetime, when we live in that not enough, it's hell. We're living a living hell, because no matter how much money is coming in, no matter how good your job is, if you're living in the fear that you're going to lose it, or that it's going to run out, or that's not going to last you for the rest of your retirement, then you're not happy ever. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this show is happiness has to start with the way we see ourselves and what we have, which is exactly what you're saying.
I think that's true. And because, and I might have mentioned this last time, but even if I didn't, I'll say it now, that otherwise you get to the end of your life and you feel like, what happened? I missed it.
Right.
Because I was focused on all these things that don't mean anything now.
Right.
When they say that, in all these studies about the 5 biggest regrets that dying people have, and they're all basically, and each list has a little variable in it, but most of them have to do with, I didn't show up for my life as it was going on. I didn't realize that the ordinary moments were the best moments. That just the smell of my kids' hair, the morning cup of tea, the walk with my husband that we took every day. If only I could have just one walk back, I would show up completely for that. And then I wouldn't feel like I'd missed my life.
Beautiful words. Beautiful, beautiful words. Geneen, you continue to be a great teacher for me. I appreciate so much. How do people work with you? I know you have a private practice, but you have a retreat coming up. I wanted to make sure that all my listeners knew about it. Tell me when that is.
I actually don't have a private practice. The work that I do is only with my retreat students, and I work very closely with them.
Okay.
So I don't really work with anybody but people in the retreats. And
I'm sorry.
The retreat is coming up on May
17th
13th to the 18th.
Okay. And where is that?
It's at Mount Madonna. People can find, which is in Watsonville. It's at a retreat center. The value of coming to a retreat is that it's an immersion environment. You get away from all the demands of your life. You're in an environment that's totally set up to support you, your individual process. There's a lot of one-on-one individual work, and there's eating meditations. And then there's the exponential growth factor of being in a community, which, as people often say, it's better. It's the growth that happens when you're in a community of 100 other people is unbeatable. It's the power of community and also of focus and an immersion. And so that's happening from the 13th to the 18th in Watsonville, California. We're doing another one in November at Asilomar, which is by the ocean, also in Northern California in Pacific Grove. And otherwise, people can go on my website and
GeneenRoth.com.
Online course. Yes, it's GeneenRoth.com with a G, Gen, and we have online courses, 2 online courses that are also fabulous, that are ways to begin. What I would most recommend, and this is why we've started the retreats and offer so much support after the retreat.
Okay,
that's it's not only the thing itself, it's also the engagement afterwards that matters.
Okay, that's what I got mixed up with the private practice, because I know people who have gone to the retreat and it is transformational. It was for them.
Yeah.
And then they were talking about the support they got, and I misunderstood. I thought that was a coaching practice.
Yeah, no. We divide people up in buddies, so they have peer support, plus I speak to everybody twice a month, plus my retreat team also speaks to them. Plus I do 2 small weekends a year just for retreat people. So there's
it's
endless
a community
support.
It's community.
Yes.
Transformational community. Right. Awesome.
Yes.
Any last words? Any shout out? Any messages of love to anyone in particular you would like to give?
I think I want to give messages of love to everyone and say that what you most want is possible. It's just not where you think it is. And, I sort of often feel like Glinda in The Wizard of Oz, just that you've always had the power. And and noticing your choices, noticing that you're getting on that bus of ranting or terror or shame or guilt or fear or blame or judgment is actually transforming of it. So it's not that far away. Right. What you want is the bat of an eyelash away.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. You get another Dr. Marissa Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award again. and thank you so much. I am just so, I feel like I know you now, and I'm very blessed to have that. It is a joy. Peace and blessings to you. Take care. Until the next time. Okay, bye. Oh, wow. That one is going to be a play over for myself as well. And I know for a lot of my listeners, some just great life balance tools on when you feel not enough of anything. So I'm grateful to iTunes for holding this podcast, as well as UBN Radio, as well as Stitcher for the week, and for YouTube. I am blessed. A couple of things on my I almost forgot to put myself up here. Wow. I hope you enjoyed that Throwback Thursday interview. I picked it specifically because of my friend Harlan, who lost his beautiful home, and as well as his kitty cat. And he texted me yesterday, his house is gone, and my heart just broke for him. And, I have incredible guests in this past 622 consecutive weeks. So I went back and looked in my balance vault, and boy, it's not the same losing a house to a fire, but losing $10 million is pretty catastrophic as well. And I hope you enjoyed her returning as a spotlight interview for Throwback Thursdays. And I wrote in the chat all these things that she mentioned, and which I love the fact that I thought about doing this series, because there's so much wisdom and so much wealth in the teachings of all of my past guests that I may not remember. I have great memory, but my recall sucks. And certainly all the things that she talked about today, I told Harlan, I chose this for a topic for the show because I want to support him. And, he says, I just don't know what to do or how to feel. And I'm like, feel everything. And right now is not the time to say I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And, Geneen Roth did not wake up the next day and go, oh, goody, this is a great life lesson that I can write about. I heard her say, 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks to sort of, lean into the support of your friends. And Harlan has a gazillion loved ones who support him and wish him very well. But, it's a tragedy. And it brings me back to the Orange County tragedy that I was in the middle of, the salon shooting in Seal Beach. And, that the first week, for those and any of you who are supporting your friends who have also lost in this horrific fire that continues to really challenge us with, not going to blame and shame and anger, certainly being just hugging and allowing people to feel whatever they're feeling is what I learned in that tragedy, that no amount of saying there's nothing to say that's perfect, that's going to make people feel better. Working through and feeling fully is my formula when something bad happens to you, and not repressing or I'm fine, because later it'll come back and bite you in the fine. So, when you're sad, you're sad. Tears are the disinfectant that keep your heart soft. When you're mad, you're mad. And it's not fair. And it's certainly not something that you think about or prepare for. And there's no amount of any justification that's going to make you feel okay. And it's okay. So this next 3 weeks, it's we can help and support those who have lost many different ways. One, holding them with the power of the energy of love, that breath, and we'll do that again. We did that yesterday. Just taking a deep breath in through the nose and releasing peace, comfort, wisdom, just holding people who are going through loss right now, and just knowing that eventually it's going to be okay. Right now it's not okay, and it's okay that it's not okay. And I told him that I'm here for him, whatever he's going through. You can, whatever stage he's in, or not theorizing it, but allowing people to be where they are in this time. And do try not to say stupid things like, I hope you had fire insurance, or you can rebuild. And, just don't be more mean than well when you're being well-meaning. right? It is the time just to hold people where they are if you are close to someone. And shared broken heart is well, first, nothing can really break your heart, but that feeling that your heart is broken, certainly, if you share that, it will take some of the load so that people don't feel like they're going through this by themselves. And I think Geneen said, what her when what she was able to do. Her first response to her friend who was talking about, you really didn't lose anything of value. And she said, this is really not the time that I need any spiritual advice. I thought that was brilliant. So that is, timing is everything. And maybe in 3 weeks might be time for you to say things like that. But certainly now in the first 3 weeks, in the first month of tragedy, the best thing to do is for me to keep my mouth shut with my friends and just be there for them and saying, I'm here just to listen. I'm here just to be a shoulder for you to lean into, lean on me, lean on me, lean on me. And now's not the time to sing that, but I know that people who are affected are listening as well. And for you, I cannot feel what you're feeling at all. I have no clue what it is like to lose a house or a pet, but I do know that I love you, and I love and I always want you to know how much you're loved, and that's my job, So I'll do that for Harlan. I'll do that for anyone right now who is going through just this tragedy and the pain and the feeling of debilitating loss. But I promise you, it's not always going to feel like this. All right. I hope you enjoyed this Throwback Thursday series special. Tomorrow is Straight Talk with James Hawthorne. And not quite sure what we're going to talk about, but it will always be straight from the hip. We're straight shooters on Fridays. It does get a little funny too. I haven't been dating, not enough time or desire, so no dating stories tomorrow, but I'm sure we'll have something to talk about when it comes to relationships, which is usually the focus of Straight Talk. So we'll see you here tomorrow. Free subscribe on my YouTube TV channel. Thank you for joining us here on Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show on KCAA, home to the Asian Oprah, #1 talk in the IE. Thank you very much on the station that leaves no listener behind. KCAA, NBC News Radio, AM 1050, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. That's it for now. It's all about balance, peace in, peace out, world peace through, inner peace. This is Dr. Marissa wishing you the best day ever. We will see you. Oh, thank you, Leo. We will see you tomorrow. Take care. And like I said, have the best day ever.